So yesterday we discussed, very good morning everyone. Yesterday we discussed what is a live memory forensics, what are the list of process running in particular computer, and what are the services, what are the established connections, and we also discussed some of the websites for live memory forensics. One is FTK, Forensics Toolkit. In that you can go for accessdata.com. Next one is NCase, guidance software.com, and autopsy. Okay, in guidance software.com we discussed how to recover the deleted files. It will do log management also. So I said logs are most important. Example, if you connect any pen drive, if you log will be registered generally. If you connect a pen drive to your computer or a PC, a log will be registered. If someone switch on your computers, examples I'm saying, if someone opens a website, there will be some log will be there. So to do some activity, if you do some activity, that will be log will be registered here. So this NCase FTR also finds the logs to recover the deleted files, to check the hierarchy of the files. So we also discussed one of the another one is autopsy.com. Next to free utility, free of cost, as a top tool for collecting the evidence from the victim machine, or you can say of offenders machine also. Next, we'll see FTK imager. FTK imager. Next one, we'll see FTK imager. FTK imager. FTK imager is a free of cost. So what is the use of FTK imager? FTK is not free of cost, but FTK imager is a free of cost. FTK is not free of cost. FTK Forensics Toolkit. This one is not free of cost, and FTK imager is a free of cost. So what is the use of FTK imager generally? For data extracting or getting some from the RAM, we are using the FTK imager. So you can install this FTK imager in your laptop or in a PC. Just download the FTK imager and just capture the whole RAM content here. Okay. So from FTK imager, when you capture data from RAM, you can also capture data from RAM as also from the hard disk also. So for that, just go for, if you download FTK imager, you can run it. FTK imager. Okay. So this is a FTK imager. You can download in your PC. So with the help of this FTK imager, you can capture the RAM as well as the hard disk data also. So what you want to do here is, so if you want to capture a memory, of your PC, just click on File. Okay, you can see the number of options here. Okay, capture memory. So when you capturing the data from your RAM, there is one more concept called as a virtual memory. So I can give some path here. Okay. Please try to understand, when you're capturing data from your RAM, there is one more concept called as a virtual memory here. Okay. So what is a virtual memory? Anyone please chat in chat box. What is the difference between virtual memory and RAM? Anyone? Just entering the attendance. Yes. What is virtual memory? Yes. What is a virtual memory? Anyone? Information which reassembles objects. Mm, any more answers? Example, can you say anyone? Virtual memory. Okay, I'll say. So in generally in virtual memory, example, if you take if you're playing a game of 10 GB, okay, and if you're having the RAM of 4 GB RAM, then how will play? If you want to play any game which is of size of 10 GB, and if you are having the 4 GB RAM, generally virtual memory. Example, if you are playing a 10 GB of game, and if you are not having a 4, if you are only having the 4 GB of RAM, generally it won't be as sufficient, right? So what your operating system will do? Yes, it will create a virtual space in your hard disk here. It will create a virtual space in your hard disk. So what are the important files? What are the important files? They will be placed in RAM, and remaining things will be placed in the virtual memory. What are the important files? They will be placed in the RAM, and remaining things will be placed in the virtual memory here. So which is there in your hard disk, and that is also managed by the operating system. So when you are analyzing the RAM, when you are analyzing your RAM, you need to capture that virtual memory also. When you are analyzing the RAM, you need to capture that virtual memory also. So that will be there in root directory of C drive in pagefile.cc. In pagefile.cc. So if you open a C drive by default, yes or no? If you open a C drive by default, it won't be visible here. So to show this operating system files, so you want to go for file explorer here. File explorer. Yes. In file explorer, what you want to do is yes, you can go for your options. So I'll not show your my C drive to you. Okay. So you can go in view. You can have the options here. In the view, you can have the options. So you can click on options. You can click on the show folders. Again, click on view. show hidden files and folders and drives. You can click on this to show the operating system files. So show hidden files, folders and drives. Show hidden files, folders and drives. And also uncheck hide protected. You can see this hide protected operating system files. You can uncheck here, this one. Okay. So now all of you open your C drive. Just do in your computer. So show hidden files, click on show hidden files and uncheck on hide protected operating system files and click on apply. Okay, and apply. So all of you now open your C drives. Just do in your computer. So when you're capturing the data from hard disk, you need to remember, yes, you need to remember bit by bit copying. You need to remember bit by bit copying. Or you can also have logical extraction. I'll say example for logical extraction. For example, if there is a pen drive of 8 GB, so I have copied some data of 2 GB of data in pen drive. So remaining space is 6 GB here. What will you do if you wish to copy the pen drive to another pen drive? Logical extraction, I'm saying. Generally, logical copying means the whole drive will be copied here. Generally, logical copying means the whole drive will be copied here. Here, bit by bit is nothing but copying means, bit by bit copying means the whole 10 GB file is copied. If it is a 10 GB data, 10 GB pen drive, the whole 10 GB is copied here. Because if you delete the file, it is registered in a file system. If you delete a file, it is registered in a file system. That file system here, bit by bit copying means the whole 10 GB is copied, because if you delete the file, it is registered in the file system, and that file is deleted, and that space is available for the clusters, you can say, clusters or sectors, you can say. So, but space which is already in the sectors or clusters used generally will not be overwritten by ones and zeros here. So in a file system, we can mention a file system and so file is deleted here. So when you are using the recovery data, it will go to the sectors and capture the data. So what we have to understand here is, if a file is deleted, the file place will not be mentioned as a zeros and ones. Data will be there, but only in the file system. It will be updated. So and so file is deleted. So now these sectors have to use it here. So for file system, just go for Google, type technopedia.com. Can you see my screen? Yes. So just go for Google. Just type the technopedia.com. You can see a different OSs or zeros have different file systems. Example, different operating systems have different file systems here. Different operating systems have different file systems. For example, if you take Linux operating system, the Linux OS file system generally uses file system uses is ext2. Yes or no? ext2 is one kind of file system for Linux. Next, if you go for Apple, what is the file system you're using? Anyone please chat in chat box. What is the file system you're using for Apple? Yes? No one? For Linux, ext2 file system you're using. For Apple, anyone? AFS, Apple file system. Okay. For Windows, NTFS. For Windows, NTFS. Yes. What is the full form of NTFS? Anyone? New technology file system. Okay. So they are also using Windows also uses the FAT32. Nowadays we are using HP FS new one for Windows here. Yes. So if you delete it, it will be mentioned that so and so that data will be deleted here. If we use bit by bit copying means those deleted sectors also copied here. The whole pen drive will be cloned. That is, whole data is as it copied here. So just go for a FTK imager in a file. You will see the logical extraction in a file. You can see the logical extraction and physical extraction here. You can see the created disk. You can see the logical extraction as well as the physical extraction. Just go for the file, create disk image, click on disk image. We'll see the physical drive, logical drive, image file, okay, contents of the folder, and some Femico device, multiple CD or DVD. Okay. So what is the use of physical device? What is mean is physical drive, physical device drive means the whole 1 terabyte of data will be selected. Example, if your computer PC has hard disk of 1 terabyte, physical drive means the whole 1 terabyte of data will be selected. It will create some image file. Logical drive means logical drive. So click on logical drive. What is a logical drive? Examples for logical drive, it may be a C drive, D drive. You will do some partitions, I think. C drive, D drive. I want to extract that only. That will be created. C drive or D drive will be created. So which drive you want to extract? You can do. You can extract from that here. Only C drive I want to extract the data, or I want to extract from the D drive. If I select the physical drive, I can extract the data from old hard disk space. Okay. So like this, we can do the live memory forensics. Okay. You can install this FTK imager. It's a free of cost, and try on your computers. No problem. Now we'll go for the syllabus. So yesterday we discussed the different laws in previous classes. Now I'll go with risk management. Second part of your second unit. So in this unit, we'll study define the risk management. What is the risk management? Risk identification, risk control, and we also describe how risk is identified and assessed. And we also explain the fundamental aspects of documenting risk via process of risk assessment here. So we'll describe various risk mitigations, strategy options, identify the categories that can be used to classify the controls, and we also recognize the frameworks for evaluating the risk controls and formulate the cost-benefit analysis here. At the end, we'll discuss how to maintain the risk controls here. Maintain the risk controls in this chapter. So generally, the organizations must design and create safe environments here in which business processes and procedures can function. So what is a risk management? Risk management is a formal process of identifying and controlling the risk facing an organization. Generally, risk management is nothing but process of identifying and controlling risk facing in the organization. So this process is made up of two understandings. One is risk identification. Next one is the risk control. So what is the risk identification generally? So it is a process of examining and documenting the current information technology security situation. That means what are the risks it is facing in the organization generally? What are the risks facing in the organization? You want to examine the current information technology security situation and what are the risks facing in the organization. So for this risk identification, there's a need of risk assessment. So what is a risk assessment? Risk assessment is a documentation of results of risk identification. You can say. Risk assessment is a documentation of results of risk identification. So you already studied this type of risk management in the software engineering, I think. But you are studying here according to the security, information technology. So process of examining an organization's current information technology security situations here. How the organization facing the risk, what type of risk facing to control these type of threats, different types of threats. What are the risk facing in particular situation can be understood by the risk identification. Okay, now. So for that, we need some risk assessment. Is nothing but some documentation is needed for the results of risk identification. Next, coming to risk control. What is a risk control? It's a process of applying the controls to reduce the risk. So what type of controls you're applying? Whether you're applying firewalls for your organization, maybe physical or logical. Whether you're applying some IDS, intrusion detection systems, you're applying some proxies, DMZs. So what type of controls you are using, applying for your organization to reduce the risk to your organization's data and information systems. So generally, risk identification is conducted within larger process, within the larger process here of identifying and justifying risk controls, generally known as a risk management. So once again, risk identification is conducted within a larger process of identifying and justifying risk controls known as a risk management. So you want to identify what are the risks facing in the organization by different documentations, okay, different risk assessments, and justify the what are the risk controls you are using, control mechanisms you are using to identify the risk facing in the organization. Is nothing but a risk management here. So for that purpose, you want to overview the risk management here. Know yourself first of all. You want to identify, examine, and understand information and systems currently in the place. Currently in the place is nothing but currently which are in your organization. So you want to identify the risk first of all. Examine it. What is the problem faced in the organization? What type of risk you are facing? What type of threat you are facing for your organization security control? You want to understand. So if you are troubleshooting anything, so what you will do generally? If you are troubleshooting, if your computer PC is doing some problem, example, some beep sound is coming in your CPU. Please chat in chat box. What you will do? You are just seeing like a hackers, seeing the slides, listening the slides, just like a hackers, passive hackers. If any beep sound comes in your PC, what you'll do? Anyone? RAM removing and placing in the other slot. Good. So you will troubleshoot it first of all. So if you are a technician, you will do some documentation generally. If you are a technician also, if you are a technician, the technician will understand the problem first of all. Examine it. Okay. Understand, examine, identify what is the problem you are facing, and they will document it. The information, what is the problem you are facing in the particularly in the organization. Yes. So you want to identify, you want to know yourself first of all. Identify, examine, understand what the information systems contain in the organization, and you want to know the enemy. So you want to identify, examine, understand the threats facing in the organization. What are the threats? Enemy is nothing but what are the threats? What are attacks you are facing in the organization? So what type of viruses, what type of threats you are facing? Whether these controls are more enough to control that type of threats or not. You want to understand that. So who is, there's some roles are we discussed in previous classes. Role of communication of interest, communities of interest, communities of interest. So responsibility of each communities of interest within the organization to manage the risk that are encountered. So who are the people in the communities of interest? Anyone? Previous class we discussed in first year already. So there are so many people are there. Information technology people, information security people. So management and users, you can see. Okay, information technology people will be there. It may be vice president, whatever it may be. So all must be aware of this together and address the levels of the risk. So what these committees of interest are responsible for generally? They want to evaluate the risk here. What are the risks facing in organizations? Evaluate the risk controls, and they want to determine which control options are cost effective, which control options are cost effective. You want to see the budget also, cost effective for organization generally, and acquire or you can install the needed controls. Install controls, needed in controls. What are the controls you need for your organization? And they want to ensure the controls remain effective. So what are the controls they are using, whether they are effective for long time or not? They want to document it every time. Yes. So what is the committees of interest are responsible for? One is to evaluate the risk controls. Next one is which control options are most cost effective for your organization. Then acquire, or you can also installing the needed controls. Ensure that controls remain effective here. Work properly for your organization. If any threat is happened, any risk may be happen to organization, security systems, then you want to avoid this type of problems here. So these are some components of risk management, risk identification. So in risk identification, you will identify an inventory of assets. What is asset? Asset may be any hardware, people, software, all comes under the asset here. Okay. The risk may be for even for people, hardware, software, network. So you want to classify that and give some priority for the each asset here. Classification. You need some classification. You'll learn something different classifications in coming classes, and give some priority for each asset here. And you need to identify and give the priority which threat should be first evaluated. So risk management strategy generally calls on us to know by identifying, classifying the organization's information assets. Risk management strategy generally calls on us to know by identifying, classifying the organization's information assets here. So these assets are targets for various threats, you can see. So these assets are targets for various threats. If we are taking a software for your organization, is a one of the threat, is a target for one of the threat, you can see. Website, one of the threat. Is a target to one of the threat. Depends upon. Hardware, it may be people. These assets are targets to various threats and threat agents. So our goal is to protect them from these threats here. Okay. Once we have gone through this process of self-examination, then we'll move into the threat identification. To begin managing risk from the vulnerabilities, we must identify those vulnerabilities first. So to identify the risk identification, we need some risk assessment here. We need some documentation. Yes or no? Risk assessment is nothing but documentation of results of risk identification. So for this, to begin this type of risk assessment, we need to manage risk from the vulnerabilities here. We must identify those vulnerabilities and begin exploring the controls. Explore the controls that might be used to manage the risk here. So we can begin the process by identifying and accessing the value of information assets. So you need to identify the vulnerabilities here between assets and threats. Identify the quantity and assets explosively. Then you need to control the risk. What is the strategy you are using? You need to justify the controls, and you need to implement and monitor the controls. So all these components comes under the risk management here. So what are the components of risk identification? So already discussed this, roles of committees of interest, evaluating the risk controls, determining which control options are most cost effective for your organization, acquiring and installing the needed controls, ensuring that controls remain effective. So what are the components of risk identification? Risk management involves identifying, classifying, and giving some priority for organization assets. A threat assessment process generally identifies and quantifies the risk facing each asset. So I have different components for risk identification. So it may be a people, it may be a procedures, it may be data, it may be a software, it may be it may be hardware. So what are the people? Who are the people in the organization generally? Example, anyone? If you are there in my class, please respond in chat box. Who are the people for organization? Shall I type? Employees. Employees and non-employees. Yes, employees and non-employees. Again, in employees, we can see trusted employees, and also see some other stuff. Non-employees generally. What is a trusted employees? Trusted employees generally have some trusted roles, greater authority, can say, greater accountability. Other stuff, they have some assessments. They have some assessments. Other stuff. Non-employees generally comes under contractors for your organizations. It may be some consultants, and members of other organizations, members of other organizations also. Strangers, you can say. Then coming to the procedures. So there are two types of procedures generally. One is a IT business, IT and business standard procedures. And we also have IT and business sensitive procedures. IT and business sensitive procedures. So this IT and business sensitive procedures, nothing but you can see example, theft of your documentation. What is it? Theft of your documentation. Next, data. Anyone in chat box? Sleeping, all of you? So data, nothing but a components, you can say. Information in all states, like transmission. Yes. Processing. What you process the data, what you do with the transmission, and storage also. What is the software components? Software component. Anyone? Software? Example for software for your organizations. Generally, software for organizations generally characterized in three categories. One is applications, tools. Okay, applications. One is it may be tools, and operating system we need. Yes, compulsory, and some security components. Okay. Coming to the hardware. So what is the hardware generally? Generally system devices. Usually system devices or networking components. So all this comes under the hardware. So before risk identification, risk management, okay, we want to identify the risk in your organization. So what are the components to identify the risk identification? One is the people, next one is the procedures, next one is the data, software, hardware. So all this comes in the risk identification. These are the components. Yes. So you need to write the examples also in examination. Who are the employees? What are examples? Trusted employees or other staff, employees, non-employees, contractors. You want to write these examples. If they ask for 2 marks also, you want to write the examples. Please remember. So first step, plan and organize the process. Okay. First step is to risk identification. Already said. What are the components for your organization? You want to identify that. What are the risks facing by the components of your organization? Risk identification process. They want to follow the project management principles here. Project management principles, which are executed by the executive, upper management people. Begin by organizing a team with representation across all effects of groups. So this process must be planned out. Periodical deliverables means you want to conduct the awareness programs generally. You want to conduct some training for the employees. What type of threats you are facing in the organization? What type of risk you are facing? So they want to take some reviews in the organization. Some till some date to date. Maybe 1 month, it may be 6 months. So what are the problems you are facing? What are the threats you are facing for your organization? They do some documentation and some presentation to the management, how the risk will be controlled, what are the new threats emerge, what are the old threats evolved already with your controls. You need to give some presentations to your management, organization management, to avoid this type of in future, this type of risks in the organization, what type of controls we need. Yes. So these are components of risk identification. This is a process goes like a waterfall model. Okay. First, you want to plan and organize the process, and you want to classify, characterize the system components, and you want to inventory and characterize assets, classify and prioritize assets, identify and prioritize threats, specify asset vulnerabilities here. So what are the components generally? People, processes, data, software, hardware, and you need to classify that. Who are the people? In the people again, employees classification, non-employees classification again, procedures classification, IT business standard procedures or IT business sensitive procedures. Some documentation if any threat is happened, theft is happened for your documentation. Organization sensitive data is revealed here. So you want to go for the different characterizations here. You want to classify the data here, first of all. You want to understand what are the system components. Okay. Even if you have process, you are doing in the data, you are doing some transmission, you are sending some data to other organization people. Transmitting your data, processing your data, storing your data is one of the threat. You may face some threats for this also. So you want to classify, you want to characterize the different assets here and give the priority for which asset after classification, which is more dangerous. Okay, which is more dangerous. For that, we are going for the asset identification and evaluation. Some iterative process begins here. Iterative process begins with identification of assets, including all the elements of your organization systems, like people, processes, data, and information, software, hardware, network. Yes, sir. Some iterative process. We are beginning with the first identification of your asset. What are the assets you want to know? You want to include all the elements of your organization system. Already discussed as people are the asset for your organization. Process is our asset for your organization. Data as well as information is asset for your organization. Software is also asset for your organization. Yes and no. Hardware, network. Networks is the most asset for your organization. So these assets are classified and characterized here. And you want to see the problems. What are the problems? Asset identification inventory. This is nothing but already discussed now till now. Employees. Already discussed this also. People, employees, non-employees, people of a trusted organization, strangers, procedures, maybe IT business standard procedure or IT business sensitive procedures, data, information, transmission, processing, storage, software, it may be applications, operating system, security components, hardware, system devices and parables, and internet components, internet intranet components, internet at DMZ, demilitarized zone components. We'll discuss in last one, DMZ, fourth unit. We'll cover all these things. Okay, we'll stop with this. We'll go with tomorrow, people, procedures, and data asset identification. We'll discuss clearly each and everything topic.